Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
So Logan, after almost 2 years, I think it's 20 months specifically, Microsoft finally complete the purchase of Activision Blizzard King for almost $69 billion. What's your first reaction when I say that? Is it relief? Because it's sort of a relief for me that it's over with, because I have to contend with listening to other gaming podcasts occasionally, and when hearing them blow through it was just painful at times, which is sort of why we left it alone mostly. Stayed away. It was like, well, it's a lot of money and that's all we know about it. We'll let the rest of them figure it out. But initial reaction for ABK now under the Microsoft umbrella. Big Phil spender indeed.
Yeah, there's been a lot to sift through, I think, and a lot of speculation as well. So I think steering away from it is largely the right decision. But what's my first? My first initial reaction is I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah, it was.
It doesn't feel that long.
I think it was January 2021. I think that's the
mad,
timeline.
Isn't it?
It's gone that long.
I'm not criticising the timeline. It's more just a case of it doesn't feel like to me that it's been out there that long, but it evidently has done. And I think it would be one of relief. I mean, it's one of those things we've obviously discussed it, and it feels like it was always going to get over the line one way or the other, right? I don't think that was in doubt. But it was just becoming a little bit of a saga, I thought. It's good. I mean, whether it's good or not, I guess remains to be seen. But it's good that it's over the line and we can now start thinking towards perhaps
another acquisition.
Well,
I mean, they
can't rule it out.
They have said they're not done, so I don't think they're going to spend another $69 billion on one publisher. But almost anything under that.
Empty.
Well, I don't think they are. I think they. I mean, if you cut Xbox away as its own division, absolutely, they've blown themselves to smithereens. But they've got Satya and Microsoft's money to be messing around with, and clearly have ideas to spend it. With inflation,
Such a mad amount of money, though.
No, I don't think people have ever grasped that properly. Like, that's never been. There's always been the concern of why is it being looked at from the regulation? Why are they being so hard on Microsoft? I'm like, 69 billion, like 1 billion. Just think about that. Like, count how many. It's ridiculous for them to do 69 of it. And I think they bought ZeniMax, which is Bethesda and Co, for 7. So this is almost 10 times that amount, and we're in the billions. So it was always going to get raked over the coals. I don't know what people were expecting or wanted, and
it's a huge deal, and financially, obviously, it's massive. Like, it was more than Musk bought Twitter for. That was like 40 something billion, and I thought that was a big deal. So like a huge
Twitter is
corporation.
X.
Sorry, yeah.
Now take us off the platform.
The platform for using previous branding.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a massive deal.
On that front, better logo. Just the standard X. I didn't like that little bird. I never did, but it was just a means to an end, wasn't it? You had to get on board with it. Now it's just a nice X.
I don't like how everything, because he's already said that he likes the letter X. Like, obviously, he's got SpaceX, Tesla Model X.
We should do Gaming X, just in case.
Well,
they'd be like, I'll buy a ready-made again. A ready-made Enterprise.
Got the basics built out for him.
I'd only ask him for 1 billion as well. I'm not asking for that. Well, apparently billion's not a lot of money these days, so I'd only ask for a bill. That seems quite low.
Small fry, I think. It's a huge deal, huge amount of money. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think I saw some quotes from Phil earlier in the week about mobile and various other things. So they've obviously still been planning knowing or expecting this to go through, and now you'd expect them to start putting some wheels in motion.
Yeah, I've got a few of them here actually. I mean, one of the small thing. Well, not small. I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's all legacy content. But he did say, don't expect any ABK games to drop on Game Pass this year. So that is we're 3 months from the end of the year, not even that, 2 and a bit. So it's, January 1st, a load of them might have arrived. But I thought that was interesting that he's just setting expectations. Snip that in the bud. Don't expect Call of Duty. Don't expect old Call of Duty. Don't expect Tony Hawk. Don't expect any of this just yet. We're just integrating this. And one of the reasons he cited, whether it's bollocks or not, we'll never know, is they weren't 100% confident that it was going to go through when it did, or when it was going to go through, when they were going to get clearance. So they didn't do much prep work, it seemed. They sort of sat there and said, well, let's not waste resources assuming it's definitely going through because we might need to pivot off this, which is understandable. Also, look, do they just dump a load of legacy content in one go in 2024? I don't think they do. I think they stretch that out. Every month you get a new Activision Blizzard / King game. It's the subscription model. I'm surprised these Netflix fucks have started. Well, they've stopped doing, haven't they? With that Witcher, they cut that into 2 parts for no reason. Clearly just to get another month sub out of you. But generally they drop things all in one go. And I always think, well, if you just carved it up a little bit, you might keep people hanging around a bit longer. But yeah, so no games this side of the year, which is somewhat surprising, but not a big deal. He did say they're going to take a, quote, respectful approach to the amazing trove of Activision Blizzard franchises. I don't know what that means. Again, it's Phil Spencer, friend of the show. Call of Duty, no more exclusive timed skins or timed content. So that's a net positive, I think, for everyone involved. I don't know how the beta's been rolling out, but I think pre-order PlayStation had it first, then it was PlayStation, then it's everyone that I don't know what they're doing, but I expect the pre-order stuff to still stay there, but I don't think it'll be locked down to platform, which is a good thing. More people to be playing that. I'm sure Jim's fuming that his little added bonus that he's had for the last five years or so is going to disappear slowly. And he did say they don't want to turn all of Xbox's franchise into mobile games, but does say the acquisition makes, quote, Xbox relevant on the largest platform, hinting that is obviously a focus for them, which it probably is.
Such a shit on, though, isn't it? Because the largest platform, and everyone's got a mobile, right? So I think you can't really dispute that as a fact.
But it's nonsense.
But it's nonsense because it's not a true. Oh God, here we go. It's not a true gaming platform yet, is how I would position it. Obviously, we discussed that over the last few weeks anyway. But it's accessible by everyone, and having Call of Duty Mobile and Candy Crush and all those sort of things are going to be a big win for them, I think, in penetrating the mobile market because they've got all that expertise.
Yes. One of the things that has been long rumored is they want to launch some sort of Windows type store or a way of getting their content via their own store. I don't know how realistic that is based on Apple and Google devices and how that all works. I lost track of. I know Epic were trying to go after Apple about certain things like that, about enabling. I think you can. I think they're going to enable sideload. I don't know what this shit means, but essentially that's one thing that people are speculating on. But is there anything in the mobile space particularly that would interest you? Whether that's a crossover, whether that's bringing a Halo mobile game in the same vein of Call of Duty, whether that's just Candy Crush but with the Master Chief. Like, is there anything on the mobile side that you think they could synergize between the two that might interest? Because you're more adept to trying the odd mobile game, like proper mobile game, than I am. So I don't know if there's anything there for you that might get you feeling, well, I'll give that a go.
I'll always give something a go, but very little, especially at the moment, is kind of keeping me like this. I just do it because there's nothing else to do. Like if I'm locked on one of those trains, I'll do something out of boredom. Like that's pretty much what it's become for me. So I have to say, like, there's nothing that I'm particularly like asking for, I guess, or that. I mean, look, if something Halo related or whatever it might be, Gears of War related. I don't know. It piques your interest just because of that name, right? But I'm adamant that certain types of games and casual games, I hate using that term, but something casual, something pick up and play and easy to do is the best way of accessing a market rather than something super hardcore.
Yeah.
But that might change. I still think, I was playing, out of all things, yesterday, RuneScape on the train home because I was bored, doing a little bit of leveling on there. And even there, the connection's cutting in and out. And it's just such a... Even in that environment where I'm trying to actually do something and I'm locked away in it, I still can't do it properly because the connection's so poor. So I think there's a lot of problems for it. And it's probably more suited at hate to say it, like a younger generation. Maybe I'm just not that sort of at that age now where I'm going to play that kind of stuff in that way.
I think we're in that awkward middle ground where we grew up with console games and having access to consoles. The generation above us didn't, so you see those old fucks playing those mobile games thinking that's the best thing they've ever played. And then you've got the youngsters coming through that like that as well, so it's almost like we're stuck in the middle.
But again, we are slightly different, right, in that we're probably and I'll call us the spoiled few, because I've got on this desk an Xbox and Xbox Series X and a PS5. Down the shed, I've got God knows how many different consoles. I've now got a PC in the mix, a Switch, and a capable phone. So if you take away everything that's on this desk, and let's say I've just got a really capable iPhone,
or a Wiley Fox,
or not capable. That's the problem with it. It wasn't capable, but it was an entry. It was an entry into the Android world. But I think if you turn it upside down and the phone's the more capable thing, then it becomes something where you go, actually, I can play certain different games. But knowing that I've got this capability here kind of makes me not want to play those games on a mobile device.
And there's a lot. Most people don't play as much as what we probably do on average anyway. It's just not a focus. Gaming's more of a side thing than a hobby, if that makes sense. It is a time killer and nothing else. So there's and that's most people, I would say. But there's the king side of things. It's no doubt going to give them a presence, obviously, in the mobile space, but also financially they'll be able to take all the profits from that, which has been one of their better performing arms of it. On the Blizzard side, obviously they've got a ton of franchises and whatnot. I won't go blow by blow through any of this just to be warning people. Don't expect a whole hour of this nonsense. But I did want to touch on one thing that I find interesting, that they've got World of Warcraft now, which operates on the old school model of you pay monthly for that game.
The OG, some might call it.
The OG. You only get access to that one game. Now, a lot of people say it's always been worth the price of admission, and we've got the Salmons of the world and the Dave Lappers of the world that continually go back to that and sub for more months than they don't each year, and have been enjoying Classic and all that sort of stuff. But they are in a bit of a strange spot. They've got this Game Pass lurking, which is the ultimate value in gaming, offers you hundreds of games at a monthly price. Will they,
I can see,
at some point say, look, World of Warcraft is now a Xbox-owned franchise. As per our agreement with you, the fans, of giving you our first-party games, it now includes a World of Warcraft subscription. Off you go. Thank you. And now it comes...
No chance. I'll call it now. No chance.
But why
Ain't
not?
happening.
But it says on their fucking website... First party goes day one. And this would be day 6,000 because it's so old, this game. But
I mean, I think they're going to use this.
I mean, that would be suicide financially for that. But do you think how big that could make World of Warcraft? Or they could monetize it? It would open it up to 25, 30 million players, and who knows?
I think they'll sort of say that is in its own little
exception.
box.
Yeah.
I think they'll go. It's always been that way. We don't want to change that established model, whatever it is.
Taking away exclusive skins that we all liked, didn't we? Love all that.
I mean, it'd be great for me. The more that they put on that Game Pass, the better. right? Because it's a net win for people like me and you. But you'd probably argue for people that don't want to do that. There might be some people, I don't know them, that are upset about this whole thing. And they go, I want to just... Do you know what I mean? They'll be like, the hardcore or a hardcore few might be upset about it. I don't know why.
Battle.net, which is a good platform in comparison to that Xbox app. So if they're going to learn anything from Blizzard, I would say you wipe out that Xbox app and use all the tech for that Battle.net. But
I'll bet your ass it'll be the other way around.
I mean, it'd be foolish
because it all integrates, doesn't it, with this fucking Windows store and all that crap.
I mean, look, they've got a soft asset there in Battle.net, and they should at least utilise that and
reskin it. Yeah,
but we'll see.
But yeah, it's an interesting one actually. When just quickly on the mobile piece, one that I did forget that's another big one is Hearthstone. Like that is a pretty good one. They recently put League of Legends on mobile, which I gave a go of as well, because I'm not a League of Legends player. I was a bit like, what on earth is going on here? I didn't really get it. And when I did get it, I was like, this is not the platform to be doing this on.
No.
So there is that wider piece, I guess, than just Call of Duty Mobile and Candy Crush. There is that League of Legends Mobile. There is Hearthstone. Like there is a pretty good, and there's probably more that will occur to me after this podcast as well of games that ABK have successfully transitioned to being on mobile. So when I thought about those, I was like, hang on a minute.
Even Bethesda have done it. They had Fallout Shelter. They've got that Elder Scrolls Castles, Elder Scrolls Blades, I think it was. You've got Doom, Mighty Doom, I think it's got some. So even Bethesda have been at it in the mobile space, and obviously ABK come with some expertise, or probably one of the best expertise you can get your hands on of already successful stuff. But you're poo-pooing my idea of transferring all World of Warcraft subscribers into Game Pass Ultimate subscribe and say, now you get all this as well. And
if that happens, you can clip this bit on here and show it back and do a little laughing thing over it, because I think it'd be great if they did it. Like,
yes.
I would absolutely take it, because I'd love to give it a go and stuff like that. It's one that always passed me by, but I just don't see. I think that's far too big a cash cow to. I mean, if Game Pass started floundering or was struggling for ideas, then they might go, World of Warcraft's coming over, and everyone will go, what?
Yeah.
But I think that will stay in its own realm.
What about as a concession that they try and make a console version of World of Warcraft, so it stays?
This is also a problem, right?
Yeah.
So
we've got Final Fantasy 14, which is done that, which has been on PC and PlayStation, is coming to Xbox. So it is possible, and console players have always missed out on World of Warcraft. You can keep the subscription model and say you're still paying whatever it is a month to play that, but now we open it up to our console brothers and sisters.
I don't really know how they make it console friendly, because those sort of games are naturally not. They're just point and clicks, and doing anything with point and click with a even like Football Manager. They've done Football Manager console, and it's so poor with a controller it's almost unplayable. Like it shouldn't be allowed. You have to be plugging a mouse in. So I mean, they could arguably.
You look at Final Fantasy 14 and say, I'll see what they've done with their controller mapping. Okay, done.
I don't
know if it's any good or not. I haven't played it, but
well, no. I
don't think it's horrendous. Same with Diablo. That was seen as an impossible thing to do, and
it's always going to be a downgrade. Is the way that I would phrase it. But it could be playable, and you can make it work. But I mean, who knows what they've got planned? They might decide to launch it with its own subscription on Xbox, which would be weird. But
that's the
I'm
thing,
not really ruling anything out.
We'll see. I mean, I tend to err on the side they'll be pretty cautious with most stuff, at least initially, because they're cash cows 100%. For a reason. Like you don't really want to be upsetting that Call of Duty fucking system where they churn out a game every year that sells 20 million copies. Like you just don't want to be fiddling with that too much.
Game's broke, don't fix it is usually the rule that you want to employ.
There's a lot of support studios that operate under those that don't get the name sort of parade that the Infinity Wards and the Sledgehammers, and I've forgotten what the other one is now. The other turd one, but it's
Treyarch.
Actually, they weren't too bad, were they? That get, but if you start underpinning and seating support studios, you've got to fill it with someone else. You don't just pull off a Raven or a Toys for Bob, and there's a vacuum left there, is what I'm saying. That it's going to be difficult to get those teams out there to back to what they were doing before they got put in the Call of Duty system. Activision side of things, any wish lists here for you? Anything that Phil can do to improve perhaps a Call of Duty or another franchise, or anything from that side of things?
It's a really tricky one, because for all my criticisms over the years, like, the company and the sales are still phenomenal, right? So if they haven't bought it to run it into the ground, to move it back to what I'd like.
They haven't bought it to bring the Lost Vikings back for me. They simply haven't. So I have to accept that there's not going to be a great deal of change. And I think others will get a shock when they realise their favourite obscure franchise is just left.
Yeah,
perhaps it's ported to Game Pass as there you go, you can get at it now through this, but don't expect reboots of your favourite obscure Activision or Blizzard franchise from the 90s.
To be honest with you, I'm not expecting a whole load of change.
No.
Like, if anything, I'm just expecting it to just run as it has, largely, for a long period of time. There might be smaller incremental changes. I think there will be stuff that comes to Game Pass over a period of time. I don't think Call of Duty will, or at least the latest releases. Warzone, for a start, is still a standalone proposition that's free to play anyway. Like, I just don't think it's going to be the way. They might do things like segregating the campaigns. I don't know what they're going to do, but arguably, like, they clearly don't want to, at least initially, take a load of it from PlayStation, because they still want that revenue. So they're obviously using it as the cash cow, and want to use it as the cash cow that it is. Yeah. So I don't see it changing that much, because it's been bloody good at doing what it's doing, right? I think Xbox obviously just want to benefit from it, and that's what they'll do.
The benefiters. I think I think of all the leeway we've given Phil and co, this now has to be no more excuses from this moment onwards. In terms
of what, decent games?
Yeah, in terms of a constant stream of content, this has to be the line we draw and say, this is it now. You've just spent 70 billion and you've just got 3 huge publishers sitting under one umbrella. You can't be getting this leeway anymore. They're going to win these sympathy battles of like, oh, we're a challenger brand. It's like, well, challenger brands don't typically spend 10 times what the biggest acquisition in the industry was, which was actually their own acquisition a few years before. Like, that's not a true challenger brand as far as I'm concerned. Normally they're a bit more financially strung up. This is Man City now, isn't it? This is now officially Manchester City. Have gone out and just bought one of the highest assets they can because no one else could, and they're going to implement it and use it to their advantage. So that's the level of scepticism I'll always give them. You should be winning the treble every year. Amount of fucking money pumped into these places. So this is what I'm expecting now. Might be unfair, but I don't know. I don't see how you can make the argument of, well, poor old Xbox, they're still struggling to become relevant. So, well, no, you've got Call of Duty and Minecraft now, for one. You've got a mobile division. You've got Blizzard. You got it all. You've got Bethesda. You've got the next Elder Scrolls game. You've got Fallout. What more do you need?
Insomniac.
Well, I haven't got them. They were like 200 mil.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, when you look at something like that and put it up
one
against
developer,
69.
So, but yeah.
I still feel like they lack in that.
Bollocks.
I mean, you could argue Bethesda do that, but I don't see that they've got someone under their wing that's going to do what PlayStation are doing. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. They might not be aiming for that kind of level or game hype, if you like, and not buying those developers. Because otherwise, you think surely they would have done. Like,
well, I don't think they were at the races when Insomniac and Sony were putting together Spider-Man, because Marvel would come to both Sony and Xbox about making some sort of Spider-Man game. Sony went, oh, Insomniac might be a good fit. We'll do the publishing thing, blah, blah, blah. Xbox put thumb up arse and went.
Do you not think that's interesting though? I'd expect like Microsoft and Xbox to be kind of more on a level with like a Marvel type game. Do you know what I mean? Like it just feels like a more natural fit in a weird kind of way. It's just interesting to see that it's gone that way.
Well, I think there was definitely a period of time when Xbox weren't at the races or didn't have their finger close to where the pulse was even beating, had it on a corpse next door. So they weren't understanding what could be popular for them. And you can see that for the whole Xbox One generation, an utter abject failure from a content perspective, a disgrace in many, compared to what that 360 gave us, like utter drivel trash. And again, you compare it to the PS4, even worse for them, made them look like right fools. So I think now they've realised that and are doing a better job. But yeah, this is it now. The dance has started. The sympathy is gone.
Interesting.
Man City have entered the chat. I don't know what you'd call. I don't know what PlayStation's equivalent is. Could be like Manchester United going through a real transition phase and never getting out of it with this live service.
I don't know, because you'd argue that PlayStation is still winning in some respects.
They
still,
are.
So
Spurs, top of the league. Won't be by the time this podcast airs, I reckon. Or was it internationals this week? No, it's not, is it? It's not.
No. Spurs don't play till Monday anyway. Okay. But it's only a matter of time anyway.
I always used to compare them to Liverpool, who were like doing pretty well with like they had a good system in place, weren't spending silly money, but
and they went and got Verge and Alisson.
But compared to what these City fucks have been up to for a decade, but that's who I always used to put them as. But then they fell off last year and. Maybe 2.0 is back at it. I don't know who Nintendo would be. That's the one I've always struggled with. Sort of the old stewards who are absolutely...
I'd say they are United.
United are so poor now. Nintendo arguably at the top of their game.
Because they've got a lot of money. Like, they're not poor.
No.
And they do continue to win despite some shit being released. Like, they get away with poorness.
Maybe they're not like a... Maybe they're sort of like a... Because even Real Madrid spend loads of money. I don't know. I don't think there is an analogue for it.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
So for us to ponder.
Any ideas, put them in the chat for who Nintendo can be. I think we've given Xbox to be Man City, Liverpool still for Sony and PlayStation, but who could Nintendo be? It doesn't have to be Premier League, but it would be easier to pit them against each other. Anyway, it's enough of that ABK nonsense. That should be it, really. We'll get like... the game drops and whatnot. I don't know if that will even make the news in our abridged version of that, but I'm glad it's over and who knows what they do next and who knows whether Sony respond and go for something big. I doubt they're going to spend anything close to 69 billion. I'd be surprised if they spent over 5, but we will see. But this is Idle Game Chat, Dimp Digital's flagship video game podcast. Got apps running the operation, which is me. And then Logan, the resident referee, who is co-host. Although he doesn't do much hosting, just sort of responds. I think a co-host should actually come with topics, personally. So I'm always perplexed when people say, oh, here's my co-host, and then one just sits there. I think they're giving him too much credit.
I don't know, maybe we're like the Holly and Phil. Dick and Dom.
Bungalows. Would love a bungalow, actually. I'm sick of these stairs. That's the idea, isn't it? Because then you've always got a downstairs toilet. Everyone's got to look at the floor plan when you move. Everything's downstairs. Anyway, enough of that.
Ideal.
Yeah, it would be ideal. Maybe in a later life. Patreon.com/Dimp Digital is the place to go. If you want to join the community, as this is a grassroots and independent endeavour. No money coming in apart from those that wish to give us that through Patreon or through Twitch, and we are forever grateful. Let's move on. We've got 4 games that have come out in the Fantasy Gaming League. 2 big ones, 2 not so big ones, how I'd split it up. Let's go in order of when the reviews started to appear. First of all, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. So, this is in Parky's Fantasy Gaming League team.
Certainly is.
Which is not ideal for you, because it's scored, at the moment, a clean 91. Adkins has got it in the Grand Prix, which we'll get to. but it's hit that sort of that optical sweet spot of getting into the 91s. I think it's got 110 reviews at the moment, so it could slip to an 89 if people start crapping on it, but it will likely hold at least a 90, which is always good to see. Let's go to Matt Miller from Game Informer. He gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Insomniac has nailed the rarest of video game development feats. The team has landed a trilogy of games that all stand up strong on their own merit, but unite into a sweeping saga made better by experiencing it in its entirety. While more Spider-Man games will inevitably expand the mythology in new directions, there's no need to wait. With Spider-Man 2, the developer has found what makes superhero stories worth telling and retelling, and giving its likeable heroes the journey they deserve. So, what's your thoughts on this? You were saying people crapping on Spider-Man. Now, I'll tell you what. I'm surprised that it's on a 91. I'm talking like splitting hairs here. I think the original got an 89 or a 90. And my theory was that that's the highest it could get, because the tropes that it would probably lean on, which is traditional checklist open world tasks, clearing down, fucking doing antenna towers or whatever they were doing in the first game to unlock parts of the map. I'm told people are tired of that they don't want to play it, that it's bad game design, that it's garbage. So I don't know what Spider-Man 2 is. I've not actually played it just as we record this, but I was expecting it to get a little bit of a kick-in for that. And some of the bigger outlets not necessarily gave it a kick-in, but I think the IGNs gave it an 8, GameSpot gave it an 8. And they're usually on the higher end of the average. So normally if something's got a 91, they're 9.5s or 10s, not 8s. We saw that with Starfield. They dragged it down by giving it 7s. But what's your initial thoughts? Have you seen much of this? Have you stayed away from it? I've not looked at anything other than that one review. I've just checked the score. Not a technical disaster. I'm like, right, let's roll into this and get playing.
Exactly the same. So it's basically, I don't want to see any of it. I don't want spoilers. I want to be surprised when I turn it on. But I've seen a couple of headlines, and I read a Metro reader feature thing that was
they're the lowest of the low.
But I was like, I like to check different ends of the spectrum to see what's being said, and then, like with anything, I go, what are the loonies on either side saying? And then we'll find out somewhere, no doubt, get the nuance and go somewhere in the middle. But essentially, people are getting pissy because it's not an 80, 90, 100-hour epic and they're charging $70, £70 for it.
What's it, 15, if they're saying? Something around that. And then if you want to... 15
hours-ish for story, and then side to it and stuff, it's probably about a 40-hour escapade.
These people need strangling. They do. That might be an extreme take.
Yeah.
You don't want 100 hours. Oh, my God.
Well, I'm not saying they've specifically put time frame on it, but the likeness is like when you get like a Starfield that's come out and...
Well, here you go. You get a Starfield that comes out. Poor old Adkins can't finish it. Keeps crashing on the credits. It won't let him It won't let him finish the game.
And that's happened to a nicer guy.
That's a 1 in a million, probably. But just because a game's long, I've said this forever, it doesn't make it better.
I agree.
What's
so
this? This Valhalla. You get that for 15 quid now. Sorry, I'll shut up.
It's not an issue for me.
No.
But I think that's where some of the criticism is that because you're asking £70, $70 for these games now,
go on sale, you fucking cunt.
Is a 15-hour campaign enough?
Yes.
That's the question. And the retort from the devs and stuff has been, well, we think it's good enough that we could charge that, which, and arguably is with anything. You can charge what you like for your product.
Yeah.
Are these handbags worth thousands of dollars? Are these cars worth like 1 point? How do you judge value? It's a really difficult thing to attribute value for money, right? And arguably, if they think their product is worth what they're selling it for and people are going to buy it, then they're going to do that, right? That's called business.
The market will dictate whether it's too expensive or not, and we'll find out in a month or so.
Exactly. But I think that's the small criticism that has been levied at it, is that it's a short campaign.
Is that a criticism that you would get on board with, or do you think that's actually a benefit? Because I'm on the opposite side, where having something that's not going to be 70 hours is a blessing these days. I mean, I enjoy my long games, but how many times do we sit here and I say, I got to a certain point and it started to outstay its welcome? It's almost, and I always say they're overindulgent these days. They're so up their own fucking arses that they don't know when to stop. And you get a 30-hour game that goes to 70 hours. You're like, what are we doing here?
I love the way that I knew this would buzz you as soon as I mentioned this, because I know it's a pain point for you.
It can be any game as well, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be Spider-Man. But
I agree. There's some games where I'd be annoyed if Football Manager ended after 20 hours because I'd go, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But look, I think considering I've played the first Spider-Man, Miles Morales in relatively short order, and this is creeping up on it, the last thing I'd want is to be fatigued by 70 and 80 hour games, right? I actually thought that Miles Morales I enjoyed it more because it was a bit shorter.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds weird to say that, but the length of something to me doesn't dictate how good it is. I.e., I don't want a film in the cinema to be 3.5 hours, right? I don't want it.
Those
Stick
Avatar
up your
films,
arse.
they're hard.
Yeah,
they're hard work.
It's too long. My arse hurts. I get hungry, thirsty, want to go to the toilet, and I can't pause it. So I don't be liking it. And it's the same with games. Like I'm not just going to play Spider-Man. I've got several other things to do, and I'll play Spider-Man, and I'll go and do something else. Like I don't want that to be consumed as the solo game that I'm playing for the rest of the year. So. I'm happy with it, and by the sounds of it, there's a lot of side stuff to do once you've completed the campaign and stuff. Like 40 hours is fine.
Yeah,
I don't need anything more than that. But it was just interesting to see people getting pissy about that, basically saying, "I'm going to have to stop playing these sort of games now because it's just." And I was like, "If you can't, right, and this is if you can't afford it, don't buy it. That's my number one rule in life." Yeah, right? I don't get pissy because I can't buy a Bugatti, right? It levels, right? So if there's a cost of living crisis and we can't be affording games, you don't buy them. You don't piss and moan because they're only 15 hours. That's my perspective on it. It's like,
why don't you just buy Tetris because that never ends and then you ain't got to worry
That's what he said in the article. He went, I'm just going to play my retro games. I was like, well, do that then. Nothing's stopping you.
No. There is I will say that if a game came along and they said 70 UK pounds and the entire thing took 4 hours, then I think there's a definite conversation to be had there, because that's an exceptionally short runtime for a £70
I will
product.
challenge you. So chuck this out there. There is a game, the first game that comes out in using fully fledged Unreal Engine 5, right? And it's fucking unbelievable. Literally, whenever I see Unreal Engine 5, it literally looks like real life. I cannot properly distinguish between whether it's a game or not, right? It looks unbelievable. And they go, here you go, Joe. You can play this. 5-hour campaign, £70. But what you're playing is you've never seen this before. You've never played anything like it.
I mean, if you want to live in the world of reality, that's never going to happen. But for this scenario, I still think there'll be a problem with it for most people. And again, we go back to this, it's all individual, isn't it? Would I personally take the plunge on that? I probably would out of curiosity, but I wouldn't moan that I'd spent the money. Now, I might get in there and say, actually, I didn't enjoy it that much. That wasn't a good investment. But, I've played £5 games that I've had oodles of fun. I've played free-to-play stuff that oodles of fun with. So, look, I think there's a case to be made if this was 5 hours long, but it's not. 15 hours feels in that window, and with the side content and whatnot. I just think it's a reductive way of looking at it. We've already getting the rumblings of the industry not being sustainable because the games are growing in budget. Now, if you're making a fucking 80-hour game and it takes you 7 years to do, well, there's a budget problem for you. So the tighter games can be made. I mean, Insomniac have done, since 2018, there's a Marvel Spider-Man, 3 DLC packs for that, Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and now this, in a 5-year period. Four titles. Pretty good. Well, 3 really, isn't it? Was that 4? 1, 2.
Well, it's 3 plus DLC.
Speddins, Miles, Ratchet, Speddins 2. Well, Miles is a half game, but what I'm saying is that's a pretty good turnout.
And they've reused NYC and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not.
But most games these days, they deliver something, and it's like when we're going to see Guerrilla Games, they've done Horizon Forbidden West, they've done the DLC, gone. They won't see them for 5 to 7 years, and they're going to go off and make a 100-hour game. That's how much time I spent into Forbidden West, and I love that game, but I don't expect or want every game to be half that length. I don't. I think the game should be as long as they need to be for either story, narrative, or even gameplay and progression purposes. Any more padding, and you're disservicing the entire package.
It becomes noticeable.
Yeah, and then you just know
or whatever. Yeah,
and it's not. I mean, you could argue in the first Spider-Man game, those bits where you break out and control Mary Jane slow you right down. They take about 15, 20 minutes. It's like, are they there just to pad out certain sections? Maybe those fucking puzzles and those bloody technology things that you've got to do. Is that all? Yeah. But 15 hours is plenty for a story, even if you mainlined it, I think. At least for me, anyway. Again, it's all personal, isn't it? That loser on the Metro read of writings are clearly not, but he should be playing Tetris, and then you won't have to worry about a game ever ending because you will not complete it. Near impossible. But I'll be playing this, and at some point, some of us will report back with some opinions on it. I wanted to get to Super Mario Wonder next. This is in Parky again, so it's a double whammy this week for him. He's tried to catch up with you, and we'll go through the scores once we've got through this. And Adcock, who transferred it in, very smart on his behalf. Only 59 reviews. They came out on the same day, the 20th, which was a Friday. Don't know whether Nintendo are more protective of their codes. Seems like it. But it's got a 92, which is good, very good for a 2D Mario, and we've not had a true one for a long time. But here's IGN Italy, Mattia Ravanelli. I thought I'd go for the Italians because of Mario, because he is. Yeah. I'm sure he's Italian. I don't know, actually. What is he? He's even human. Some people say he's not a human.
Well, I don't know what the true lore is.
No.
But I always understood he was a little Italian plumber.
Anyway, Super Mario Bros. Wonder paves a bold new road for the classic Mario experience. Never a 2D Mario has been so surprising and satisfying since Super Mario World. Now, that's the key for me. Super Mario World is my favourite out of those. So that got a 9.5, by the way. So that's a very nice score indeed. Now, I've boxed myself in with Mario and the Switch. I've already said several times that Switch is unlikely to get picked up until that new one is revealed. And I know what's going on with backwards compatibility. I don't want to be in a situation where I buy all these games and then Nintendo come along and say, right, we've got the Switch 2 and we're re-releasing all the games again. Higher res, higher frame rates, all these added bits and pieces, but you can play your old one. That might not transpire, but I'm happy to wait. So I've boxed myself in from that perspective. Also on the Mario front, I've been working through the back catalogue of the games. So I've got to Mario 64 and I haven't played it yet. But I'm going to go through all the 3D and 2D Marios in order and then catch up and get to this. So I've got 2 Ronnieisms costing me, so it's going to get played for a long time. You, on the other hand, though, had this penciled in as a absolute titler. And with a Curry's UK-only deal, it was lurking for very good prices. £38, I think, was the price that it was being sniffed around for. What's happened here? It's come out on the same day as Spider-Man. Who's going to get the nod? Tricky.
I'm really reluctant to pull this Switch out, is the problem. It's the predominant problem. I mean, from my perspective at the minute, Speddings absolutely gets the nod. It has to. Considering how much I enjoyed the first 2. But I think, as I've said to you before, Super Mario World. I was just going to go into this whole Itsumi Mario thing. Did you see that? No. I don't think we've covered this bit of nonsense on here before. Did you not see this?
No.
Oh, right. So, Mario goes, Itsumi Mario, right? There's this thing that was doing the rounds on social media that apparently he's not saying, it's a me, Mario.
He's just saying it's me, and he's just got a thick Italian accent. It sounds like that.
Well, the allegation was that he was saying Itsumi Mario, and Itsumi in Japanese means super. Allegedly.
Well,
So what they were saying is he's actually saying Super Mario, but in Japanese. I believe that is fake. So I think it's fake news. But it was interesting nonetheless at the time to hear it. Because I was like, oh, maybe it is Itsumi. Yeah. But he does say it's Itsumi and Mario. So basically what I've done there is fact check something that didn't need to be fact checked on this podcast. But broadly, I'm interested. I think I've been more interested in a 3D Mario, much like itself, would absolutely be a purchase. The 2D Mario will definitely. It looks good. It looks fun. I like the elephant thing and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah, I'd say watch this space. I haven't pre-ordered it. I haven't used that Curry's code.
Bloody hell! Like pennies to be saved.
There is. You're right. And that Nintendo store doesn't do sales on its first-party games. It just doesn't happen. So
very, very rarely.
Yeah. So I think watch this space. Perhaps one to report back on. It's more than likely going to be something that I might pick up over like Christmas when I'm off for 3 weeks or something. I might do a bit of that. The
Jackbox Party Pack 10. This is Hall's Fantasy Gaming League.
Snuck in under the radar.
It's only got 11 reviews, but it's on an 80, which is better than you could have hoped for. Shack News, Aussie Media, 8 out of 10. It's been a fun 10 years, and the Jackbox Party Pack 10, like so many Jackbox efforts before it, is a worthy inclusion into your family game night rotation. Now, I've played these Jackbox things various times, and it's always been when you're forced to interact with people, when you're going around someone's house, or you're staying at fucking... What's that place we used to get people go to, the woods?
Centre Parks.
And then you get a cabbie and then someone puts that on. You have to spend a fucking night playing that, and all you want to do is just get drilled, but you get forced to do all this shit. Anyway, I say all that to say that I've played it and enjoyed it, but I have no intention of ever playing number 10 unless I'm forced into it. I'm assuming you're in a similar boat and you don't have these all 9 others downloaded and ready to play with the family.
No, I did. As I say, I used to play them like years ago, probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I played Jackbox when it first came out. Yeah. I actually didn't realise they were doing annual releases. I knew they'd released additional ones, but I didn't know this was kind of a yearly thing they were doing. So
the new FIFA.
That was news to me.
Can he say that?
People are obviously playing it, and I think they're pretty good for what they are, right? I think they're a good blast for a couple of hours. They're not something that you'll continually kind of go back to, but I think I still think that like the Mario Party ones are just a far better, fun way of doing stuff like this. But it's an interesting little play on it. They're reasonably good.
Let's have a look. It costs 22 UK pounds is where you can get it from shop2.net. So whether it's worth that,
I think
I'm never going to know.
I mean,
if I brought that people coming around, I'd expect people to chip in for that. So I'm not paying 20 quid of my own money for you slobs. In fact, I won't even put it on. I'm not doing it. You can sit down and watch a film and be quiet. City Skylines 2 is in Salmon's team. A 76, only 29 reviews out, so could change. This is interesting because before the game came out, they posted a note on their forum basically saying that it ain't going to be up to snuff from a technical perspective. Now,
interesting.
They didn't meet their own benchmarks is the way they kind of worded it, but said that they feel like this is still the best way to go is just to release it. The console editions are already delayed, so they're coming next year. That should have been the tip-off that they were struggling there. But on the PC side, they've said it basically our own internal quality levels this ain't meeting, but we're still going to release it anyway. And I just wonder why they're doing that. I just think that's just the wrong way to do it. It's coming on Game Pass so people can check it out and not have to pay out if they've got access to that subscription service. But generally, I don't think this is a good thing to be doing. Anyway, 7.5 out of 10 from Game Informer, Sarah Thwaites. Quantifying the nuance of City Skylines 2 isn't easy. As I dig deeper into its complicated system, more and more exciting features still come into focus. The sequel is ambitious and wants players to juggle hundreds of considerations as they build towards Elysium and delivers in that aspect. Yet unfortunately, the game's consistent technical problems tend to mire that calculated success. So getting Sounds like it could have been better on the score front, which isn't the end of the world. We've seen games recover from worse situations, but I mean, I played the first one, enjoyed it for what it was, but got bored quite quickly. Didn't really have a target, so I just got to like my city, I should say, to city status, and I was like, well, that'll do for me. I've got no interest in building a super city or anything like that. I got rid of it. So any chance of me checking this out were basically binned once I saw that note going out that it ain't ready. I was like, what are you doing? But any thoughts on this bizarre but transparent bit of news that came out, and City Skylines 2 in general? I mean, it's a bit of a bizarre one, isn't it? I don't know if they're under any obligation to release it, or financially they're just so strapped up that they just needed that cash injection, but I just don't see what world is. You come out and say it ain't meeting our own benchmarks that we targeted, yet we're going to release it anyway. Yeah,
I mean, you're literally admitting you're releasing a subpar product, right? Yeah, you don't see a car manufacturer come out and go, look, buy our car, but it don't really work properly yet. Or like a food product come out going, well, we don't know whether this is nice. Like, it's just a bit of a strange thing to do. Like, if you're going to release a product, you want to be able to stand behind that product, surely, rather than just going, here you go, buy it. It don't work properly. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. It just seems like a weird.
Here's the quote. City Skylines 2 this is from their forum post, is a next-gen title, and naturally it demands certain hardware requirements. With that said, while our team has worked tirelessly to deliver the best experience possible, we have not achieved the benchmark we targeted. I mean, blah, blah, blah. In light of this, we still think as a long-term project, releasing now is the best way forward. It doesn't make sense to me. I was like, what?
There's no way that you can word salad that to make it anything other than it ain't ready, but we're going to chuck it out anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the wrong thing to do, in my opinion. Financially, they may be right under the cosh, and it's the only option they had. But look, they were transparent at least. They ticked people off, but still, you're still committing the act. You don't go, I've just cut that old lady's throat and admit it and say, well, I told you about it, didn't I? They don't get you off the hook. You still did it. And that's an extreme example.
It's almost worse because you're not even pleading that you were innocent. You're just sort of going, I know. That. Yeah. I mean, as you say, I'd rather have the transparency, but I'd rather you didn't release an unfinished game, really. That's where I'll always sit with it.
I'll keep an eye on it because I may dive back in if it's got a bit more structure to it or there's something that catches my eye, but that's going to be months out given what's happened here.
I've always struggled with City Skylines because I always look at it and think that could be cool. Like, I like the idea, but then I've always struggled with the purpose. There has to be a purpose.
Yes.
Like, I'm either trying to get better at it, I'm trying to master something, I'm trying to achieve some sort of goal. And that just looks like, it's like why I've never picked up Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know what my goal of that would ever be. And some of these games where it's like, they're good, there's something there, but I just don't really know what the purpose is. So I think that's one that I've always...
Euro Truck Simulator falls into that category of, it doesn't really have a purpose if you just drive the trucks around. But what they did was basically integrate a sort of a career mode where your purpose is actually to build out your trucking empire. So you start off just you and your first 18-wheeler. You do that job. You do another job. You invest the money into buying other drivers to go and do it. And then they passively get income. You buy more fleet. So it had a purpose to it, which I think... I saw that Flight Sim started to add more stuff like that, but then they announced Flight Sim 2, and I was like, well... we'll wait for that then. Hopefully that'll have it all there day one. But we seem intent on releasing things and then thinking up good ideas afterwards of what might have been good to jump in there. So annoying. Fantasy Gaming League. So you and Parker are now level on games that are out. It's the first time it's happened in months. You've got 776. He's got 756. So you do have a 20-point delta. It's going to come down to whether Super Mario RPG can overhaul Football Manager 2024. Now, it's got to score 21 points more than Football Manager, which would require a blow from Football Manager, which is unusual in terms of what their averages are, or just an exceptional remake of this old RPG. It can still happen, though.
I would suggest
you're not out
both of those things need to happen. I mean, I think, look, realistically, in my brain, Football Manager's lowest is 75. Like, absolutely, if it bombs, I can't see it getting less than that. So Super Mario RPG needs to be like Game of the Year. I think it's my assessment.
I think when I did do a bit of research on Super Mario RPG because this is a remake of it. I think it scored on Game Rankings, which was the old site we used to use for aggregated scores. I think it won 89%, which wouldn't quite be enough unless Football Manager really blew it. So, I mean, I think it'd be reasonably close. But if Football Manager just does what it normally does and gets an 85, you don't have to worry about it because it'll be over
it's
100 points difference. Yeah, so I mean, that is as it stands. I mean, there's a couple of scores that might move a couple of points either way, but it's going to be between an 18 and a 20-point delta that needs to be made up. And
I mean, look, I have to say that is a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. Like, especially on early season form, I thought I'd have feet up. Yeah, pretty much. And I haven't. Like, it could still, it would be an unexpected result if it happens, but it's not impossible.
No.
So, you know, I think if Football Manager for some reason does only get like a 7 out of 10 and averages like 70, like, it's with entirely the realms of possibility that Super Mario could get a 91 or be around that, and then you're literally down to late season variances until you draw the line in December.
Yeah.
What's the final? What is it? Is it still the 16th? I've still got that date blasted in my mind.
I think it's the second Friday, so it's the 8th, I think. I could be wrong. Right. I'll check it. I've wrote it down in that group, so I won't be swaying from that. Fine. But
it's not a concern right now. But it's like until that line gets drawn, there probably will be one or two minor variances, perhaps.
Yeah.
So it could, you know, if Parky pulls that back, I think that's phenomenal work. Like his late season subs and whatnot have really.
Well, I think he'd given up. His team basically forced that upon him, not to expose his inner workings, but I think he'd given up. And Hall basically said, look, we can still win this, and was driving that. But
the Hall never say die attitude.
Hall, one of the worst Fantasy Gaming League Grand Prix performances I think we're ever going to see, based on it. He's going to get all his games out as well. But as it stands now, Salmon has joined Biff in the clubhouse of 10 games out, roster complete. 781 points for Biff, as we know. 780 as it stands for Salmon. So it's 1 point off. That could change because City Skylines hasn't got a lot of reviews out, so they could go up or down. But that is extraordinarily close. Paper is next, 9 games, 7-11, 70 points off the title. Adkins is next, 8 games out, so he's got 2 left. He's only 94 points off. So he could win the whole thing if his second from last game scores a 95, and he wouldn't even need a 10th game, which would be an embarrassment to everyone else in the entire Grand Prix. Hall, 8 games out, 586 points, 195 points off the pace. Adcock Lurkin, 7 games out, 541 points, 240 points off the title, has the same average, has a point better average than Paper. Than Biff, So if averages continue to go that way, he may well sneak it. And Adkins, as we've said many times, it comes down to this day before, whether that comes out or not, because it just seems more and more like it's not going to happen. But he could win it with like a Dragon Gaiden scoring a 95 and he wouldn't need it. But that's very tight, that one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, to see what happens. And I'll be watching with a very close eye on whether Adkins chucks it. As I said in the other group, I'll be there gloating right in his face, I'll call it doing a James, dancing right there, celebrating in front of him.
What if you lose the title, though?
I don't give a shit. If Adkins blew it, that would literally soften the blow unbelievably. That's enough for me, yeah. Just because of the gloating around Baldur's Gate 3. That's literally the only reason I even care.
Well, we'll see. It's all wrapping up. It's all coming to a head, and it will be coming thick and fast, and we'll get a much better picture of what's going on, and obviously update as and when we need to. But that'll do for this segment of the podcast. I'm going to end on 2 things. 1, Persona 5 Royal is leaving Game Pass at the end of October. Now, I say this because I made the conscious decision to play that at the start of this year, And I said a year to the date would be October, and that's when they might pull it off. So I feel very vindicated in pushing that through, doing Persona 4, doing Persona 5 before it come off Game Pass. So I feel vindicated in doing that, but it's also a warning to people. Check when a game goes on, and the earliest it will probably leave is a year away. So just be careful. Just have that data there in front of you so you don't get caught out. Because if someone started that this week, they're fucked. You ain't finishing it. So it's a problem. Secondly, there's been layoffs at Frontier, who developed Football Manager and the Jurassic World Park games, Evolution games. The
F1 Manager.
An F1 Manager has just gone on Game Pass. So that clearly has come together in light of probably some financial difficulties. And the reason why I bring that up is because the final part of this podcast will be me talking about F1 23. And I kind of mention my concern about F1 Manager there, whether we'll get a third game out of that franchise, because I chose F1 23 this year over that. And now it's on Game Pass, I'll probably end up playing it. So I'll be chucking that on the PC side of things and playing. But those are the two items we're going to end on. We will be back probably next week. I don't like to say that in case something goes wrong or we can't be asked, but most likely there'll be... The intent is there, but we'll see you all on the other side. Here we are then, back with some game impressions to close out this edition of Idle Game Chat. Got apps here, and also our resident referee and current Grand Prix winner from the Fantasy Gaming League, Logan, usually on every episode now. I think that cadence has almost been not permanently installed, because I daren't say it in case something changes, but it's been like that for over a year now, I think. So I mean, it's not.
I love the idea that we do that, and this just forms part of the backlog. And then I dramatically resign my commission or something, and then all of a sudden we've got a podcast where I haven't appeared for ages, and then I'm being claimed to be a permanent fixture.
I was reluctant to say still FGL Grand Prix winners. We're getting to that part of the year where this could end up appearing in the next calendar year where all the titles will have changed around. So I'll try and keep things consistent, but it's not always possible. Anyway, it's F1 23, and I'll be talking through this one. Logan's got all the questions, and I hopefully have got all the answers, although probably not.
I might do. Yeah. Unusually, you've kind of sent me a couple of things that you actually want to talk to, because it's always difficult, I think, to review these sorts of games where you go,
it's
so
a
what are the
bloody
graphics
sports
like?
game. Yeah, it's like...
Yeah, it's kind of like there's not a whole load of talking topics, but I might just ignore all of these and just ask you what I want to ask.
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
then I'll really, really throw something left field at you.
We'll see what we get out of it, but I'll let you continue and ask what you need to ask, and hopefully I'll come up with something worthwhile.
Yeah, well, we will stick semi on agenda and sort of say cards on the table. And I think I have to admit, it's still, I don't ever have you down as like, I mean, you're not a car man, right? No. So you don't like cars per se.
Nope.
But racing and as a sport, you're obviously into it.
Yes.
Not all car racing, but you really do like your F1, right? You were out in Belgium watching it live not so long ago. So
pissed on by that rain.
Yeah. So you are. It's still. I don't know why it surprises me, but I think it's just because I associate F1 with having to like cars, which is just not the case at all. But you're a seasoned F1 veteran, I would call it, in terms of gaming and watching it in real life.
Yeah, so I watch all the Grand Prix that will be, going on throughout the year. And then I was fortunate enough to go and see it live for the first time earlier this year, which was good. And then on the gaming front, I've kind of got this. This is the first kind of cycle of this, so this is not this could be complete trash next year, but last year people might remember that I sat down and played F1 Manager 2022, and at that point I was like, I as much as I like F1, and it is sort of like, it makes up like the three sort of, you've got gaming, and then you've got a bit of wrestling, a bit of F1, and then other sports, football, national, rugby, all that sort of stuff. There's like those are sort of the four pillars, if you will. And as much as F1 makes up one of those pillars, I was like, I don't know if I've got it in me to play 2 games every year. Because that F1 2022, I think I spent 80 hours on it. I was like, wow, that's a big time investment. And equally, I spent 50 hours in F1 23. So it's by no means, it's something to take lightly. And I haven't really, in depth, gone into the career mode, but that hasn't really changed throughout since the last time I played it. So that's the cadence I'm on. So I'll do a management game 1 year. So last year it was F1 Manager 2022. This year it's the actual racing experience, F1 23. I think that just gives me a break, because we know these yearly instalments, and we've all been through it with FIFA and Pro Evo in yesteryear. Is that although you sit there and enjoy it throughout the year, and it's one of the most played games that you would typically play, there is a bit of you feel a bit hard done by sometimes when you boot it up and you're like, they haven't really changed much here. Yeah. And a 2-year cycle, I think, just gives me a bit of relief from that particular thought process, and allows me to enjoy some of the finer things they have been working on over a 2-year period. So that's the cadence I'm on. 1 year it'll be the management game, the next year it'll be the racing game, and we'll see what happens next year. I mean, I'm worried about the F1 Manager 2024 ever coming out, if I'm honest. I don't think they've...
It's not a slam dunk.
It's not sold, as far as I understand, as well as it could have done. Last year, it didn't meet expectations. I'm kind of thinking that could be gone next year, which kind of ruins this whole system, and I'll be quite upset with that. But let's pretend that does continue. That's my plan next year, is to go to F1 Manager 2024 and then return to Codemasters version of the racing sim, or the Simcade, I guess it really is, in 2025. So that's the cadence I'm on, my background with these types of games. But I've certainly played more of the racing games than I have the management games, simply because there's only been 2 entries of the management game. Their Codemasters had the license for about 10 years now, maybe more, might be longer than that. So I've played at least 4 or 5 of them before that.
Yeah, one question that comes to mind, and there's probably a relatively obvious answer to it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, why have you ditched things like Pro Evo and FIFA, and things like? Would you go to a rugby game and play a rugby sim, or why F1 if you don't particularly like driving? Why do you like playing F1 games?
Well, I think on the football front, I think my general interest in football has waned slightly, and it's become more of international football as a priority, and then the club football's there for the banter, isn't it? It's there to wind each other up. That's the only use it has. It's like it's simply what it's there for at the moment.
Yeah.
So with that not being as big a deal as it was, and the pub, we've got to remember, like 10, 15 years ago, we'd go down the pub every weekend to watch the football games, and that was kind of part of it. It's more ingrained in just weekly kind of culture, I guess.
Culture,
yeah. And it just isn't nowadays, which is fine. And then why F1? I don't know, really. I think it's just, when I watch it, I think I want to get involved somehow. And because you can't just go down the park and fucking drive an F1 car around the wreck, the closest thing realistically you can do on a regular basis is to play some sort of video game, at least for me anyway. Now, I have done karting previously, but it's an expensive hobby to upkeep, and it's something you can only do once every few weekends and whatnot. So this gives me a nice easy access into that world where I can kind of fulfill any sort of freedoms or ideas that one day it would be something I'd ever do. So the video games just give me a gateway into the world to be able to play and feel like I'm sort of experiencing it outside of just watching it on the TV or going to see it.
So for you, is there a distinction in your mind between racing and driving? Like day-to-day driving, rubbish. Yes. Racing, completely different. Like there's competitive and a competitive edge, and it's a sport, which is where it piques your interest and why you want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, driving, there's not many things that would be on my top list of just irritant, experiences than driving or being in a car as a passenger being driven around. Because there's just so many fucking idiots on the road. It really does just annoy. I don't know why I let it get to me so much, but it really does just enrage me. Just the overall poor standard driver, and then just the inconsiderate fucks that they don't like using that indicator. They don't like using that. So now my new comment is, their indicators must be broken.
But it's getting worse.
I know.
We're digressing, but it's getting worse because in Wales they've reduced. Cars have got better, and there's more driver aids than ever, right? But in Wales they've reduced the default speed limit on the roads from 30 to 20, right? In the name of climate change, but I'm adamant that it's because people's driving has just got worse, and I think the more driver aids that come along, the worse people's driving gets.
Yeah.
But I can fully understand it. I guess, if I look at someone like... And the reason I'm digging into this is because I think it's something that probably some of the listeners and viewers have picked up over the years. It's kind of like not a natural thing. And me knowing you for 20 plus years, it's kind of like not a natural thing that I'd expect you to gravitate towards because of your dislike for driving so much. But someone like Biff, who likes his cars, likes driving...
But that idiot doesn't even like motorsport.
Doesn't like motorsport.
No.
This is the thing. It's kind of like I sit somewhere in the middle where I like driving, and I do like motorsport, but I don't sit down like religiously to play it or to watch it. But I do enjoy it. I sort of sit somewhere in the middle. So I think it's just an important thing that I want to get when I'm thinking about reviewing and talking about a game, is like your position and how you see it. It doesn't come from like a love of driving. It comes from a love of sport and competitive racing.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that was always on the TV when I grew up. And you watch it on the TV, and then that's it. It's kind of imprinted on you from a fairly young age. Like we're going back to like the mid-90s. Yeah. And
can I add, back in the peak of like Michael Schumacher and racing F1 back sort of 20, 30 years ago, I think like I actually used to watch it back then because it was just such a different and fascinating sport to watch. The noises of the cars and everything. It was very raw. Yeah. And people would probably disagree and say, "Oh no, it's got better. It's more competitive. This, that, and the other." But it's kind of been diluted a bit for me from those days.
It's more popular than it's ever been, but that comes with its own pitfalls. The same with mixed martial arts. That I preferred that when it was more underground and like less of a mainstream kind of sport than it is now, because you just get too many people just gobbing off garbage opinions mostly, and they just overdo it as well. I mean, there's 23 races this year. I mean, it's absurd how many times they're racing, but I don't mind that too much. But yeah, it's definitely different to what it was back in the day, and obviously now they're more climate aware, so they've restricted on cost caps and things, which are probably sensible things to do for not just sustainability, which climate stuff, but I'm talking about the teams. It's so expensive to run these teams and all this sort of stuff. The cost cap probably stops teams going bankrupt and whatnot, but it does restrict what they can operate and how quick they can catch up, because they've only got so much money they can spend. It is a bit. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There always has been, but nowadays more than ever, there's more of that stuff that gets in the way. The cars are very big. They're heavy. They're safer. Which if you go back to the 90s or in the 80s, and before that in the 70s, it's startling to see how many people used to get killed just racing on the weekends. But these are all change. I mean, we've seen the change in football. It's become a money sport, and it's all this stuff. As soon as something becomes popular and money can be extracted from it, you best bet and buckle up that you're going to lose a bit of that kind of charm that it probably had back in the day, so to speak. But yeah, motorsports, it's the main one I watch. I will sit there and watch other races and other motorsports, but I won't follow them as in terms of what's going on. But if it's on the TV, I'll sit down and watch and see what's occurring. Yeah,
so I guess speaking about commercialisation, this is what brings us to they've made a game, and you've got F1 23. So what is it about the gameplay of this that you really like and or dislike? What's it like to play?
It's tricky because the game feels good to me. And
I'd agree, it is tricky because I can't race these F1 cars. It really annoys me. You have to get your braking right. So I think that's completely accurate, probably in a different way.
Yeah, it's I would say overall the actual feeling of racing and driving is very good. Now they have I'm playing on a DualSense, so a PS5 controller. So that's important to know. A lot of people play. Not a lot. Many people play with a serious races. This is play with a a wheel and whatnot. So I would never categorise myself as a serious or good racer. It's just not. I haven't got the time to get good at it, and that's what it requires. So I'm much more of a pick-up, player weekend race, go away and do the career mode. Not sitting there trying to go through practice. and time trials, just trying to get better at the game. I'm just trying to race within my means, basically, with certain assists on that help with a game, gamepad or a controller player. But they have added new. I don't know what they called it. They come out with this bollocks where it's like new precision controller, settings, and it's like, is it? But to be fair, it feels great, and those that have played last year's one, which I didn't, have said it's a bit of an upgrade on that. And I can feel from at least 2021, the driving feels a lot smoother. You do have a lot more precision. There's a lot more settings you can go into and change. So one of the things I would advise is people go in there and look for a controller setup on YouTube or something, just to give yourself a little bit of leeway either side, so you can get these cars where you need them to go. But like before, it felt like if I was going to spin, I was always going to spin. There was no catching that. Once it started, it was gone. Whereas in 23, definitely feel like I can catch the spins more, and that may be because of that DualSense, because the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers. This is where that kind of comes into its own, I think, because you can feel the grip and the slide of the tyres through the vibrations. So so rather than over-egging it and continuing to accelerate through the corner, you just naturally ease off once you realise that's the signal. And it's not something that you sit down and think about. It just, over time, because the controller's giving you much more feedback, you're able to adjust on the fly and stop yourself from getting in a situation where you're in the fucking wall. So this is where the DualSense, and I know there's always a battle that, it's a load of old crap, all this shit. It's really not. Like, these sort of examples is where it works really well, and other games could do this if they put the effort into putting it in there. And as I always say, it's better to have it than not have it. And that also comes into the adaptive triggers as well, because when you're locking up, you can feel when you hit the brake, you can feel it on the edge. If you press that any harder, the tire's going to lock. So there's all these subtle hints and feedbacks that you just can't get on another controller that really helps and aids it. So if you do have a choice, I'd say use a DualSense to play this. I think you can plug it into the PC and still get similar, if not all the settings on there. It's just if you're on the Greenblood side, you won't be able to do this. But those sort of two things combined, I think, make the gameplay experience good for what I'm after, which is very much casual compared to what the hardcores do. But I still spend a lot of time. No interest in the gears and all that sort of stuff, and the actual steering wheel. I did have a wheel about 3 or 4 years ago, but it's one of those things that it's like the VR. You think, right, I want to play a game. It's like, it's going to take me 10, 15 minutes to set it up. Yeah. I've got to get out of that fucking, whatever that storage thing over there is called. I don't know what that is.
Cupboard.
It's heavy. Well, is it? I don't know. I'll show people one day. It's heavy. You've got to set up all the, where you're sitting, and then after you get tired as well. Like, it's a fatiguing experience. It's fun, but you have to put even more time. It's kind of, the learning curve on that is so steep. And if you never get to that point where you get better than you are on a controller, it feels like a waste of investment of time.
I never got on with it.
No,
I felt too disconnected from what I saw on the screen versus what I'm doing with the wheel. Like,
you absolutely will eventually be faster with a wheel, but it takes more sort of groundwork to get to the base level where you're competitive. So, and that's where I always fell off. Like, I just know I can pick up a controller and almost within reason, keeping the decent amount of assists on. Be fairly competitive at a medium or hard leveled AI. So that's kind of where I'm at. If I was only ever playing racing games, then absolutely. But as we know, I'm playing all sorts of backwards games and whatnot. So it's just one of those things that you have to kind of pick your lane and deal with it. It's expensive as well. Those wheels, they're not cheap. So
no, I must admit though, actually, it's made me think. Like when you say I always consider myself pretty reasonable at arcade races, right? And I can pretty much pick them up and get used to it and understand how the cars work quite quickly, because I spent a lot of the time in my youth playing Gran Turismo and those sort of things. But it's fair to say it has moved on a lot sort of over the past 10, 15 years. But it did surprise me. I think it was Horizon, one of the Horizons I was playing, and it was sending me your ghosts.
Yeah.
And some of them I just couldn't get near it. And it was really annoying me. I was like, how could I not? So it goes to show you that some of that practice, and you're probably better at it than you probably realise. Because once you know the cornering and everything, like that translates from an F1 game into almost any other racing game, even an arcade racer like a Horizon, a Forza or something. So interesting to hear about your perspective on the steering wheel, because I thought I knew you had dabbled, but I didn't know why you had not stuck it out. And I agree. I think it is, organically you grow up with a controller and you kind of get to a level with that, and then whenever I try to use a steering wheel, I kind of like do a little bit and it doesn't move or whatever, and then you do a bit more, and then it's all of a sudden you're in a wall and you go, I can't, like, you can't feel, you've got no feedback like you would in a normal car, and I found it really hard to do. But when you see these YouTubers that just sort of get these unbelievable lap times and car control on it, I'm like, I just don't. There's a
whole sim league based around F1 23, which is sponsored by teams within F1. Like the actual teams have their own esports drivers that they've just plucked out off the internet, and there's like a circuit for it. There's big prize money. There's all this stuff around it, and it's just I just find it too much of a high barrier to entry in terms of just the setup and the time investment to get at a level where you're just not awful. But once you're over that hump, arguably you're kind of in glory land. But if I had nothing better to do, I'd no job, I'd no other games to play, then absolutely I'd do it. But where always gaming is compressed into free time, you kind of have to just pick your poison and go, right, I'm going to have to make some compromises here, and this feels like a fair one.
I only get a couple of hours free time either side of the day here where I can do something, so let's make the most of it.
Exactly,
So let's touch on the story mode then, which I think is called Breaking Point 2.
Yeah.
What do you want to say about that?
It's a direct sequel. So this is the second entry into the F1 story universe.
It plays on, does it? Like the one in FIFA where it's the journey.
Yeah. So what's interesting about Breaking Point is it only appeared in 2021. It was not in 2022. Now, I thought at the time when that happened, I was like, oh, they've clearly seen that ain't worth the paper it's written on. The sales aren't as good. You think, oh, that's that gone. But then I remember I was reading up about it before the game came out, and it was a deliberate act, a deliberate ploy, because they wanted to have a 2-year gap to make the story mode a bit more meaty and not just churn out something a year later. And what it allows them to do is play the story out over 2 seasons as well. Because you've got no storyline universe that happened in 2022. You start this storyline in 2022 and play through 2022 and 2023. So you get a bit more meat on the bone as well. The regulation changes come in. That's part of the game's kind of canon as well. And all the team name changes. That's always interweaved into the story itself. But I feel like that also, because I'm on this 2-year cycle with it, I've picked the right 2 years, because if this continues, this Breaking Point 3, or if they continue doing something in the story element, it should always be on the year that I get it. And to be honest, if they don't have it in a couple of years, there's a good chance that I don't necessarily pick it up straight away or at all, because I do like just to play through something like this, some sort of tick in the box. And this is a sequel, returning characters that people may have played in 2021 are here. And you take the role of a number of drivers this time, and also you get a bit of to dabble as a team boss, because you're starting at a brand new team that's come onto the grid called Connor Sport. So you get to make decisions in terms of where your drivers are supposed to be focusing their effort, and that has little buffs and little debuffs that don't really, like, this isn't Mass Effect. There ain't branching storylines from what I can work out, but it just means that you may unlock, faster elements of the car later on and whatnot. But I like the way they kind of shot this. It's shot in like a documentary style. So you get the close-up camera of someone talking, and then it'll be like a flashback to that moment and whatnot. And I will say, this is not The Last of Us Part 2, obviously, but it has no right to be as good as it kind of is. Like, I was expecting the absolute worst. And it's actually pretty good. It's really well acted. It's a bit dramatic, but what do you expect? Like, it's a video game story. But in all honesty, when I finished it, I was like, that's actually pretty good. Like, in terms of just the narrative they've played out there, I was actually quite pleased to have gone through it. So from that point of view, they've done a good job, and I think generally, when you boil down the actual playing of the game or playing of Breaking Point, it's quite shallow. Like, you are put in a scenario not each race. It skips through. You don't play 40 odd races throughout the 2 seasons. That's not what happens. It's probably about 15 to 18 you might go through, but you don't play a full race usually. You're dropped into a race mid-race, and it's like, here's a scenario, like get to position 3 by lap 10, and that's kind of your target that's been set. And if you fail, you go back to the drawing board and you have to try again. So it is one of those experiences where you have to meet the target or you will not continue. I would like to see an expanded version where if you don't meet the target, that's where the story starts to deviate and perhaps comes back round at the end. But that'll be an interesting kind of addition to it. But for what it is, it's fine. These take maybe 15, 20 minutes per race, and overall it's probably about 6 hours. If you maybe 7 if you're slow like me, sort of walking through all the menus, reading all the social media garbage that they've made. There's people slagging you off in the comments, and you're like, well. But I think it does a good job of showing all the bollocks that goes along with F1. Again, it's over dramatic. It's clearly, this is like the worst case scenario. A lot of these positions they put you in. But there's intra-team rivalries. There's pressure from investors coming down on the team to perform and to get to certain milestones. You've got PR hounding you about your comments in the media. Like, if you say something a bit inflammatory, they're like, don't be saying that in the future. You get all that. It kind of builds a nice picture of what a cinematic version of F1 might look like. I'm sure it's not like this in real life, but from the outside looking in, this is how I imagine it could go if you had a lot of nonsense going on.
Did you ever play a game called Grid Legends?
I think I played Toca Race Driver or something, which was one of the first attempts at a story like this. It was actually made by Codemasters, ironically. But I didn't get to Grid Legends, no. But that's got a similar vibe to it.
Yeah, so I did play Grid Legends, and it come out. I was just checking what it was called because I couldn't remember. I thought I'm sure I played something similar to that, but it wasn't an F1 game and it wasn't a Forza game. And I remembered it was Grid Legends. I just had a look on my profile. It says only one of my friends plays. It's not you, but it came out in 2021, I think. Yeah. But that was a very focused game around a kind of like a story-driven narrative. Yeah. Around you starting out and being the challenger and then challenging like a couple of the drivers. And I was in a similar boat where I was like, this story I shouldn't be as engaged with this story as I am. Like, and it was very bare bones, but it does work very effectively. And I was going to cite Grid Legends as kind of, I wouldn't say the genesis, but it's an EA published game. It wouldn't surprise me if there's some of that DNA running through the F1 game. And it's good. As you say, it does give you a kind of a bit of an eye opener to that kind of world, I guess, and to what's going on.
Well, it's funny because you say it's an EA published game. It's also Grid Legends was developed by Codemasters as well.
Yeah, I thought it might be, but I didn't want to commit to it.
No, yeah. So they've been dabbling with this for years. I said, the Toca Race Driver was the first one I remember seeing it. And it's too hard for me to do back then. That was my
favourite. I used to love Toca racing.
Yeah, I mean the first two were excellent, and then they sort of spun it off into more of a, because it used to be just the British Touring Car Championship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it went to Toca 2, which I think was also that. But then I think there was a Toca World or something. And then eventually it got to like Race Drive. And that's where they had the story mode in it. And that was... I could never do it because, again, it was scenario-based. You had to fulfill the obligations that the game was putting on you. And I could never quite do it because I always found the handling so poor on that particular one. But yeah, this is funny because Codemasters developed all of those games. And it's kind of like that strand has continued throughout. And to be fair, like EA, I mean, there is a whole section that we'll talk about, which is clearly EA's influence, whether it's good or bad, we'll get to. But the fact that they still allow them to put the time and effort into doing the story mode, which most people won't play, to be honest, they're just simply not going to bother with it, I think is a good sign. Because my concern when EA bought Codemasters was they would lose I never thought the games would go away because I think they realise it's a lucrative, licensing deal, and that Codemasters are doing a good job with it. People generally like the games, and there's always problems. If you go in the Reddits, it's always like, this is the worst game I've ever played, and it's like, well, it's not. You ain't played enough to just make that comment.
Remove 20% of the fringe, you're left with a core 60.
Yeah,
then somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Absolutely, I don't think Reddit has anything other than the 20% mentalists on there. But yeah, I was concerned that this might take a bit of a downturn. But coming back, in 2023 for this edition. Like, the fact the story mode is as good as it was, I was like, well, that's a tick in the box. It's showing they're not completely just gutting the studio out in favour of a monetisation method, although that is lurking.
So let's talk about that, shall we? We might as well get into it. So you've said F1 World, in brackets, the season pass tour, which I know I've thrown you under the bus deliberately because... It's just appearing everywhere, isn't it? Every game where they can get in at the minute loves the season pass. I don't know about you, but I've got season pass fatigue, that's for sure.
Well, the thing with me is this is probably the first season pass type game I've actually played. And gone through it. Like, it's called a podium pass, so I best get that out there before people go, it's not called a season pass or a battle pass, it's a podium pass, which it is. It's called a podium pass. I played through... I completely max leveled, whatever you call it, the first podium pass that came out. I think they last about 49 or 50 days. I think it's 49 days, which is a bit of a strange one. So you get a bit of time there.
How much is it?
It is. I'll look it up in a second.
Call him out.
I think it's a tenner.
Yeah.
I think.
They usually range about £8 to £10.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them more than that.
Let's have a look. Where's that? 9. So it's all. Here's the thing. It's all in Bitcoin, which is the currency. All right. So then we've got to work out how much Bitcoin.
They all do this. The Rocket Pass does it. Basically everyone.
I put buy a Bitcoin in. It says buy a Bitcoin. No.
I don't want to do that.
It's not 2016. Oh, good lord. But yeah, so it's 9,000 Bitcoin. I will find it in there. Let's have a look. So 5,000 in the Xbox store is £3.79. 11,000 in the PlayStation store is £7.19. So it's actually less than that, isn't it? It's tricky to find because obviously they do that fucking Robin Bastard thing where you can't buy 9,000 on the nose.
Yeah.
You got to buy more or less. They're not going to let you just buy the exact amount for that. But anyway, it's under a tenner, it looks like, which is not too bad. Yep.
Would you prefer it to be in the in-game points, or would you just prefer it to say it's $7.99, you pay that, it comes straight off your card? Or do you not care? Is it just really irrelevant because you still got to pay it?
I feel like it's less transparent to do the Bitcoin currency because they're trying to mask and hide things slightly. Whereas if you can see the actual monetary cost, it feels like you can make a more informed decision. So I think I'd prefer that. But that would just feel a bit too grubby almost. It's almost a bit too... It's almost too transparent because you're like, I'm just spending money on this. Whereas
Pretty sure it was Fortnites that used to just be like, pay this or use that many coins.
What do they use now? They use a currency.
No. Well, yeah, they used to. I haven't played that for a year maybe. I can't remember. But Rocket League does. It's got kind of credits and they do the same thing, and it's exactly the same where you can't buy the exact amount of credits you need, you have to buy more, and that's how they get you. But I just thought I'd see how much it is, whether it was more expensive or less.
What happened was I bought this not on release. I bought it like about a month after it came out, and the Champions edition was on sale, and that included how many fucking I think that included like 15,000 Bitcoins. So I didn't have to buy any extra Bitcoins to opt into this podium pass. Now, I would say is once you spend the 9,000 Bitcoin, however else you buy it or however else you obtain that, is inside the podium pass, it allows you to earn more than that back. So if you level it up that first time, you can continually go into these seasons, which is I think a good thing. And also there's 2 tiers to the podium pass. There's the standard podium pass, which everyone has access to, unlocks weird stuff. Like I'll get into like what you're doing in this mode, what the drive is later, and then you got the VIP sort of tier, which mostly unlocks cosmetics. Mostly, however, there are a couple of like parts and legendary parts that you can only get in the VIP one. It is. I looked and it was only like 1 or 2 items out of 50 levels, so it didn't feel that egregious. It didn't feel like pay to win to me because it wasn't like every stage you're unlocking new stuff. And to be honest, Logan, in the early stages, you do one race and you unlock something better than what you just got out of the pit. It's one of those things where it's it's a gear chasing goose chase. So you're forever changing that stuff anyway. It's not. It didn't seem like there's any long-term benefits to those, other than actually you get a team principal and it's like a named team principal like Gunther for Haas. It's just nice to have him in your library because it's like he's a real life team principal. But his stats weren't overly better or worse, and it was kind of tied to your overall power level at that time. So it's not like it gives you too much of an advantage, but there is definitely a little bit of, I would say, leveling advantages if you did do the VIP one, but not enough for me to crap all over it because I know that's a tough balance with some.
Yeah,
but you're the experienced, battle pass person, so you should be telling me about this. I don't know what I'm doing.
Ways, right? Well, no, I mean it's interesting to hear your perspective on it because I like a battle pass if it's solely for cosmetics. Now, Call of Duty muddies the water with that because they hide guns that are unlockable in there, and they make those guns meta. So you kind of have to, but you kind of don't. So they do it in a way that it's like, hey, if you want these 1 or 2 guns, do it that way. Yeah. Yeah.
What I should say is that most of the activities in F1 World are offline. So you're only ever racing against the AI, which means your power level is relevant to, and you can choose the scale. You can make the AI more powerful to give you, get more rewards and make it more competitive. The ranked leveling is all level performance. So everyone's got the same speed. Everyone's got the same, components. You can change the setup of your car, but you can just do that in any case. So I should say that actually, if you're looking at a pay to win, and that's usually applied to like a multiplayer ranked type league or something a bit more serious. In the ranked play, it is level performance. So actually, even if you were on the VIP kind of strand, you could have all this, high powered car, but you'll be racing at the same level as someone who's just walked in through the door. So I think that's an important distinction because I think that's where it can get a bit muddied, can't it? When you're playing competitively online, that some fuck's got. No,
I think that's a very, very good point because, as I say, all the ones that I use, the Rocket Pass on Rocket League, that is obviously solely online. Warzone and Call of Duty is predominantly all online based. So yeah, I think that's a great point. It's interesting actually to see these things deployed in a game that is basically a single player game, like for the most part, or a solo experience. It's kind of like, why bother? I mean, you kind of think surely just add these things as like purchasables in some way or unlockables or do something. It's interesting.
Don't worry,
to see
they've got all that. If you want to purchase some of these cosmetics, you can buy them with the Bitcoin. They've got a nice store there for you to go and buy a new.
I love that Bitcoin. Like, it's such an interesting play. Like, it's very clever. I like that. But yeah, it's just interesting to see that bleed into a game like this, I think.
Well, it's the EA influence, isn't it? Because I don't think Codemasters would have necessarily done this, but EA have specialists that probably could help build what they would see as a sustainable model where people can continuously play the game if they don't want to just play. There's a career mode in this as well. You can play as a team. You build the team and you race as one of the team members, or just a driver in a team. And I think it's 10 years kind of career mode that you can do. You can move around. All the drivers retire and move around. So it's all dynamic. But I know people find that quite stale. Like, they don't necessarily play FIFA and go, right, I'm going to sit there playing that career mode. So this offers, I guess, something a little bit different each time because there's tons of events and activities to do. Like, short 5-lap races, scenario-based play, replaying races from earlier in the season as a specific driver and trying to exceed their actual race result with all the components and the scenario that they had. So there's a lot of stuff in there for people to do, and each time you do something in the game, whether it's in F1 world or outside of that, you will be rewarded with parts and components to upgrade your F1 world car. And you can change the livery on that and change the look of it, but really you're trying to increase the power level of that. And it's very much, we cite the Division a lot because that's the one that I've been playing with you, but it's like a gear leveling system. Like you get a new power unit that adds 5 points to your overall power level, and it's a continuous kind of drive, I guess, if people want to do that, to get their car up to the soft level cap and then the hard level cap. And there's a number of different activities you can do. You can unlock new things by doing specific series and whatnot. You can play ranked online and do it that way. Or you can just play the career and at a slower pace you'll unlock this stuff. But F1 World is probably the place you want to do it because you're driving your actual F1 World car, which is part of the appeal for people that they're building this car from the ground up almost. But it's very much like every other loot-based game you've seen, just that instead of a gun, it's a power unit or a rear wing or a front wing. Or someone in the background of your team that's helping you through this. And it's got all the other stuff like you can activate a goal, do 5 laps around a European circuit. That'll give you a little boost or a little, bit of currency or cash as a reward. It's got all the trimmings that you would expect. And to be honest, when I first went in, I was like, this is way too much for me. I can't be understanding this. But I spent a lot of time leveling up that first season. So I wanted just to go through one full season and get to like the max cap. And I had to compress it into about 2 weeks because the season was ending soon. So it was a bit of a grind, but I was happy to kind of just go through that experience just to see what it was like. And it was interesting to say that. And I was actually strangely addicted to it at one point. I noticed myself jumping on for half hour, doing 4 events, and then jumping off. And I was like, that's unusual because I should be in that career mode. Ronnie should be in that career mode, doing full practice, working his way up for the career. But he's then sitting there doing what I would consider throwaway toot. Like it is, isn't it? It's just throwaway, like jump on, 5 laps done. It's not even real motor racing at a certain point.
Yeah.
But it was strangely addicting, and it was only because I sat there at one point and thought, I'm not enjoying this, but I definitely accept this is a massive waste of time. I'm not feeling the sense of progression, even though my car's getting more powerful. It felt very hollow. That's just the way I describe it, which is why I never gravitate towards ongoing games typically anyway. But
no, I mean, you're there ticking boxes, and I think one of the things we've discussed here is like that tells you how to play and dictates the time and input you have to do. Like Destiny, when we've done that over, you have to jump on, do the dailies, the weeklies, the nightfalls to get the gear to be able to do that, and it dictates your pipeline. It dictates what you're playing and when, intentionally so as well. Like
it's all timed. There's dailies, there's weeklies, there's longer term season long challenges. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all there.
It's designed to keep you there and keep pulling you back.
And it works.
To keep you in that loop. And it works,
Because you
find yourself going into it,
50 hours, I think, my game clock said. Probably 10 of that was outside F1 world. That works.
20% of his time.
Yeah. Tricky.
So is there anything else that you specifically want to call out on top of that is worth our viewers and listeners knowing?
I would say that as with every single online racing multiplayer game I've ever played, there's so many arseholes out there driving like absolute lunatics that, and the game doesn't. And I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where they're fairly sanctioned, but the game doesn't do a good job of punishing the tutters. Like I was taken off multiple times in a race, and when I did a ranked league, I did like a ranked season. I think it's every week that resets and you get promoted or demoted. It's got all that in there as well if you want to just work your way up that. But it's such a stress-inducing process that I only did it probably 10 times throughout, and then eventually I just stopped. My point was, I'm better than these guys. I'm not going to stoop to their level. But I'll tell you what, after about 7 races, I was like, fuck them, they're coming off the road with me, or I'm going to take this cunt off. Got some good videos that I'll try and share one day where this absolute arsewipe brake tested me. And it's damaged my front wing, and I went into the back of him. So I went up alongside him, just pulled my rear axle and his front axle and dragged him off the track into the wall, and he went and retired, and I carried on. I was like, take that. So it brought out the worst in me in terms of a spiteful, competitive driver. But I say all that to say that you're going to have to put up with some nonsense if you want the ranked online play against other players. Like, you just get... It's just... And I do think it's a really difficult thing to try and look after and manage, because you think how many games are playing at once. It's all going to be AI-based, isn't it? And the AI is trying to interpret... intent versus what's normal, and it can barely get it right when I'm racing against the AI. It's struggling sometimes to get the right decisions in terms of penalties and whatnot. So mixing 20 lunatics that are just screaming all around the track offline and just trying to get cutting corners, doing all sorts, it's just a recipe for disaster for them. So I will call out that is it's entertaining if you don't take it seriously, but if you're a serious player and want to get to like the elite league, you're going to have to put up with some stress, I think. I don't know if the elite divisions are any more well behaved than the sort of the bronze or the silvers that I was relegated in. Probably not, I would imagine.
People will be getting away with what they can get away with.
Yeah.
And most people at that level have found the exploits, they can get away with. So it's one of those things where you got, like, if you can't beat them, join them, sort of thing.
That's what it turned into.
If you can't, if you're looking for real life simulatory experiences, you probably ain't going to get that. Do you know what? It's a really good point, because that's, again, something that I forgot about with these racing games, is when you play people online. Like when I used to play the Forzas, you get someone that just uses you to brake.
Yeah.
You just slam into the side of you and you think,
well,
what are we doing?
Yeah. The good thing is, I will say this, and I didn't experiment with this because I don't know anyone, and I didn't really want to race that seriously. But you can set up your own race leagues with a community. Like if you want to do a serious like series, like you don't have to do competitive. There's a quick multiplayer thing where you just jump in, it just randomly selects the track. That's all there. But for those that want to race against other like-minded people that aren't going to be dicks, you can set up a league. And I know there's tons of these out there now. You can join a league where it's being run professionally. There are certain rules and standards. They usually have someone sit there and watch the broadcast mode and steward it, which is so that's all there for people who want a bit more of a serious one. You don't have to dive into this crazy F1 world ranked online league play. Although if you want your XP and you want to level up quicker, it does give you a XP boost the higher division you're in for that week. So that's the intention for people. But I suppose the long and short of that is there are options to avoid that if you want a serious... I don't want to paint the picture that it's all just the Wild West, because it gives you the tools to do a more serious series.
Online play, it is the Wild West largely, wherever you are, whatever game you're playing, you just kind of accept that. But, okay. Well, it's probably about time then that we get up to the Dim Digital Gaming Gallery to see if this goes into your gallery. So do we open the door to go in?
Yes. F123 can go into this for sure.
Okay. So we walk in, we look at it, we see all the great stuff that's been put in throughout the course of the year. Where does F123 land up for Joe?
I think it's going to get a nice solid silver, because it's the gameplay improvements felt tangible to me with that DualSense. That felt much more accessible to play, and the increased amount of settings that you can do to hone that are good. Like I said, the story mode was fairly good. It's not going to win any Oscars or Best Story of the Year type jobbies, but for what it was, it's a great vehicle to, a somewhat 6 to 7 hour entertaining romp. F1 World, concerningly addictive for someone that doesn't really get involved in that. But then again, if you want to avoid all the nonsense, the career mode's still there. Now, the career mode probably needs a bit of work. I don't know what else you can do. It's like these FIFAs. Like people, revamp career mode. What do you want, though? What do you need out of these games? I don't understand what they're after. But needless to say, that's there for people who just want to experience, what it's like to go from F2 to F1. You can do that, or dive straight into F1. It gives you all those options, or create a new team on the grid. You got all those options there. So I think overall, it's good. It's really solid, and the F1 world stuff, like the online connectivity, does plague it a little bit. Like I had a few disconnections that booted me out the game because it was struggling to connect, and because it's an online game all the time, it was like, well, you can play it then. You have to go back to that dashboard, and I was like, well, that's a bit inconvenient, isn't it? And all the menus are slow because every time you do something, it's trying to suss out if you're trying to steal something. I don't know what it's doing, but it's not happy if you're moving around in those menus, is it?
We touched on this yesterday, I think, or it was Monday, when we briefly discussed it. And it made me laugh when you said that. It's kind of like we're all roaring around now with these super fast SSDs, and you help back by checking in with a server to see if it's still online.
Because everything feeds into F1 World, even if you play just a random race, like you can do just a random race or set up an offline championship for yourself, all this stuff. But because it's always giving you XP at the end of your session, you have to go through that fucking screen at the end and deal with that. And even if you try and skip through it, so hang on a minute, we need to make sure the server knows you've got your XP. And you're like, I don't care, I'm just trying to fucking get through this. So, there's swings and roundabouts, that stuff. But I do think there's something there for people that like that kind of cycle. And it was implemented from my very naive lens pretty well. And story, career mode, it's got tons of options in there. You can pretty much do whatever you like, and you're not going to be impeded by stuff too much. So I think overall it's a solid game and one of the better entries. And I'm looking forward to picking up F125 should that arrive.
Yeah, I think they're always difficult to grade these games because, as you say, it's kind of like they're not ever going to get realistically into those kind of like upper echelons, because they're just not those sort of games. Like they can be good in their own right, but they're always there to serve a purpose. And if they do that well, then and they tick the box, they're largely going to be in that silver bracket, I think, which, as I say, isn't a bad place to be.
No.
So yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, F123, a nice silver. Well, I think we'll close down the episode. Idle Game Chat in the books again. Who knows when people listen to this? It could be 2024. I could be playing F1 Manager 2024 by now. That's how late this could be coming out. Although we have used up the big backlog of content we had, so actually, under pressure, this will probably go out much sooner than... Which is probably better in hindsight, because... Not referencing like Boris still being in charge and all this sort of junk.
It's a good window to the past. It's like opening a time capsule.
Yeah,
all sorts of stuff comes out that you weren't expecting.
Absolutely, but we'll see. We'll be back with the next edition of Idle Game Chat. Nothing more for us to say other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.